Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Dr. Bakari K. Lumumba of LumumbaSpeaks.com, in conjunction, of course, with Bequaline Network, the Pan African social media extraordinaire, the home of African centered news and information. As you know, we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on black. Want to make sure that before we get started, we have a great show for you all today. That you hit the subscribe and like button, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Hit that notification bell and make sure you share as well. We're going to be discussing a rather, I think, serious issue, right? Of course, Nicki Minaj, right? The Pink Friday rapper is scheduled to speak at the United Nations regarding the crisis in Nigeria, particularly northern Nigeria. So we're going to do a deep dive. As you know, Malcolm X, we always lean on the wisdom of our ancestors here at the Lumumba Speaks and Bequaline Network, taught us that celebrities are nothing more than puppets, right? So we will get into that. But before we do, family, we want to make sure that we take time to honor the moral obligation to remember, right? That moral obligation to remember took place on this day, 200, if I remember correctly, years ago, 234 years ago, where the Battle of Vertiers took place, which was the uh, ultimate battle in the Haitian Revolution that was able to secure, of course, Haiti's independence from France, right? We know that that battle took place. Afterwards, of course, the French capitulated. They, of course, retreated back to France, and then 6 weeks later, then Emperor Jean-Jacques Dessalines, of course, announced and declared Haiti's independence from France. So we definitely want to make sure we're honoring the moral obligation to remember the Battle of Vertiers. We know that for many of us, we unfortunately aren't educated on Black history, a lack of working knowledge of Black history. We don't blame the person. We understand that that is, of course, a result of the public fool system that purposely and willfully, and many would even call maliciously, uh, this focuses on educating Black people about the history, culture, and of course, the contributions of others to humanity rather than the contributions we've made ourselves. So we want to make sure that we're celebrating and honoring the Battle of Vertiers rather than, of course, Thanksgiving Day that we call holiday holiday. So we just want to make sure, family, that we're honoring the moral obligation to remember today's Black history fact that took place 234 years ago today. Once again, family, Sister Shy, I see you said peace. Let me know what you think of the book. I think you stated that you purchased the book. I think I saw you put up a post on Facebook, so definitely want to hear from you regarding your thoughts of my book. Of course, as you see, as you know, it is a collection of essays, just my thoughts, and so definitely would love to hear from you regarding what I have in the text. Also, family, once again, you're watching LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black Empowerment Initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black, in conjunction with Bequaline Network, the Pan African social media extraordinaire, in the home of African centered news and information. As you know, you can always be a blessing to the show via Cash App, Venmo, and of course the super chat. So we're looking forward to hearing from everyone today. The link is in the description, family. I will put the link in the chat momentarily. All right, you said you like it so far, but I did thank sister. I definitely appreciate that. So what we're going to do, family, I'm going to read an article from the New York Times regarding this issue. As many people are aware, I subscribe to the New York Times, so I read the Times almost on a diurnal basis, right? Then we're going to do a deeper dive into why the conditions that are taking place in Nigeria are taking place. We know a lot of this is being promoted. The Trump administration is arguing that they're trying to protect Christians in Nigeria, like they really care about Black people. But we can see that this is an imperial form of Christian nationalism. Even Senator Ted Cruz in Texas is talking about drafting legislation to protect, of course, Christians in Nigeria. What type of weight that type of legislation would have when you're drafting legislation to try to protect individuals in a sovereign nation outside of your own, I don't know, but we will do a deeper dive into that. I think we also need to discuss that this is being promoted as an example of African people being unable to govern oneself. So a number of things that we're going to, of course, unpack on today's show. Once again, family, make sure you like, subscribe, and share. You're watching LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black Empowerment Initiative where we believe we could gain competitive advantage by always betting on Black in conjunction with Beacon Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, and the home of African-centered news and information. So we're going to go here. Uh, I'm going to share my screen, family, so you can see as I'm reading the article. Okay. All right. So yes, you all should be able to see that. So as you can see, the headline: 25 girls abducted from school in Nigeria. The kidnapping echoed the abduction of Chibok girls 11 years ago and came as U.S. officials pressed the country to address violence against Christians. As you may be aware, 11 years ago, was about 2014. That's when it was hashtag bringing back our girls. We do know that the Obama administration, if I can recall it correctly, and if I'm mistelling the story, family, you're more than welcome to tap in and share and even correct me, because we don't want to be promoting misinformation or disinformation. Was criticized for not taking what many felt was substantial action to address the issue. So, which of course leads to a lot of questions. So, gunmen attacked a girls' school in northwestern Nigeria and abducted 25 students. The police said on Monday, the vice principal of the boarding school in Maga, a town in the state of Kebbi, was killed in the attack, according to a teacher at the school who spoke to New York Times by phone. Malam Hassan Makuku, the vice principal, was shot after he tried to block the door to the girls' dormitory with his body, said the teacher, who requested anonymity to avoid repercussions. A rescue mission has been launched by a team of police officers and military forces, together with local volunteers. The police said in a statement, rescue teams are currently focused on combing forests in the area and on routes taken by the gunmen. The gunmen stormed the school for more than 20 minutes, apparently without any intervention from security forces. There's a security checkpoint not far from the school. The police statement presented a different picture of the security forces' response. The police tactical units deployed in the school engaged them into a gun duel, read the statement, which was signed by Nafu Abukar Katarkoshi, a police public relations officer in Kebbi. Unfortunately, the suspected bandits had already scaled through the fence. Mubarak Adam, 57, a community leader who lives near the school, said he was awake a few minutes after 4 a.m., waiting for the Muslim prayer at dawn. When he heard the attackers arrive, they came on motorcycles and in cars, firing sporadically with sophisticated weapons to create panic. He said they headed straight for the school. So let's get to what's most important. Yes. So the attack in Maga echoed in the kidnapping of Chibok girls who were taken from their dormitory in northeastern Nigeria by members of the terrorist group Boko Haram in 2014. Some of those girls escaped. Some were released after several years in captivity in negotiations with their abductors. Many are still being held hostage. Since that mass kidnapping, many more have unfolded in Nigeria, particularly in the northeast and northwest of the country. Thousands of Nigerians are killed in violent attacks each year, data shows. The abduction on Monday comes as Nigeria faces intense scrutiny over what President Trump has called an existential threat to the country's Christians. There are more than 90 million Christians in Nigeria, but there is no evidence to suggest that the widespread violence in the country affects Christians more than any other group. The girls abducted from the government school's comprehensive secondary school in Maga are all Muslim, the teacher said. Yet the idea that Christians are being persecuted in Nigeria has found recent support among politicians and celebrities. In the United States, Senator Ted Cruz, Republican of Texas, introduced legislation he said will protect Christians there. The comedian Bill Maher has called it an attempt at genocide. The rapper Nicki Minaj praised Mr. Trump for his comments on the plight of Nigerian Christians and later appeared to confirm reports that she was working on the issue with Mike Waltz, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Many Nigerians hope that the attention from U.S. officials will prompt their own government to take more action against the violence. Nigerian officials appeared aware of the growing crises. We assure Nigerians that strengthening internal security remains a top priority, said Mohammed Idris, Nigeria's Minister of Information, in a statement released soon after the MAGA attack was reported. The federal government is recalibrating the nation's military, policing, and intelligence capabilities to more effectively prevent these attacks and respond with greater speed and precision whenever threats arise. So that is the article from the New York Times. Snapshot review, SSR. Happy you could be here, brother. Hope you could tap in and be part of the conversation. I know we've been missing each other. So there's a couple things, right? One, Nicki Minaj has never been considered a political individual. Uh, what we tend to find, and of course, our resident historian here at Lumumba Speaks and People Our Network, Brother Dwayne Omawale, always talks about this, that white supremacists will simply use black people to promote their agenda. And when you no longer serve your purpose, they would simply discard you. We saw this with Omarosa, who of course is from Ohio, right? We saw this with Candace Owens, and I believe we will see the same thing with, of course, Nicki Minaj, right? The second issue, of course, is they're promoting this as a issue that is religious in nature. There's a religious strife. We know that it has been a long history of conflict between Muslims and Christians, going back to the course of Crusades. But the issue here that I think many people are missing is that the reason why this is taking place is due to the power vacuum that was created as a result of Western intervention, really, I could say destabilization of Libya, right? No one is talking about that, right? In the media, mainstream media, right? The reason why this is taking place is due to the power vacuum that was left after the toppling of Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. We know that whenever there is Western intervention, these type of things take place, right? The power vacuum, weapon caches were, of course, looted, and as a result, it became a safe haven for, of course, what many people would call terrorist groups, right? So something to consider here. We also know that the United States, I would argue, is a bit disingenuous in terms of their views of terrorist groups, right? If the group is Muslim in nature, they will call it a terrorist group. But however, if it's Christian, they don't. And a great example of that would be the Lord's Resistance Army in East Central Africa. They engage in the same type of actions, but because they are a Christian group, the White House, the American government, numerous presidential administrations. I'm going to bring you in a second snapshot. Refuse to call that organization a terrorist group, right? So there's a number of things to unpack here, but what we definitely want to focus on is the power vacuum left by, of course, destabilizing Libya, which allowed Libya to become a safe haven for terrorist groups. And then the other, of course, is Nicki Minaj being used by, of course, the Trump administration to promote an agenda that I would argue the good and world, isn't even aware of. Snapshot, what's the word?
Good evening. How you doing?
I'm doing quite all right. How are you?
I'm alright. I was just about to go to bed, but then I saw it and I thought, yeah, let me just jump
Okay,
on.
what time is it in the UK?
Oh, it's 11:20.
Woo! Okay,
It's a late
gotcha.
one. So yeah, just to sort of like feed on from what you're saying, it's a little bit bigger than the Libya thing because some of the news reports that I've been reading suggest that because the Ukrainians are getting massacred so badly, they have an excess of weapons but no soldiers to actually use them.
Mm,
So their leadership are selling weapons to different parts of the world, and some of it is going to, or a lot of it is going to some of these terrorist groups in Africa and
mm,
other parts of the world, and that's where they're getting their weapons from. So it all sort of plays into it, and obviously the destruction of Libya, well, that's opened the floodgates to a whole heap of madness in that area. And it's funny because all that stuff happened on Barack Obama's watch, and at the same time, his wife was promoting um, an initiative called Save Our Girls or
yeah,
Bring
save our girls,
or
right?
something like that. And it's all actions caused by what her husband, the man she's going to bed
Right,
next
right.
to.
I'm glad you brought that up, right? So one, that's an example of symbolic political representation, but it also shows that irrespective of who is in the White House, who commands the Oval Office, America's foreign policy will always be imperialistic and militaristic in nature.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't matter if it's blue or red, whoever's
Correct.
in that, what they call it, the deep state or whatever, that agenda remains.
Absolutely. So
You
we're
know,
talking about purple if you want to keep it a buck, right?
yeah. Now
Yeah.
back to Nicki Minaj. My question is, why her of all people? Like, what? How did they pick her? She's like, what has she got to do with Nigeria or uh, even Christians, to be example? Like, why? I don't understand why her. Like
Right.
her, or even her audience or her people. well, no, I shouldn't say that because I don't know them, but I don't get the sense that global geopolitics is the forefront of Nicki Minaj and a diehard, what I would assume is a diehard Nicki Minaj fan, but I shouldn't assume that. But like, why her of all the people to actually articulate this, and what is she actually articulating for? She's gone up there and said, oh, following on from what Trump said about Nigerian Christians being massacred, but it's not just Christians in that area. So what do you only care about a certain section of the population because they're
Right.
Christian? Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's crazy to me.
Well, this is what typically happens with most presidential administrations. We know the machinations of a Western empire, right? They put people in positions of power, prestige, and high visibility, who typically have a surface level understanding of what's taking place, and then as a result, they're able to have them just parrot their narrative, their talking points, and their positions.
Yeah.
And she is a rapper, a celebrity of high visibility, right? So on the surface, it would look like Trump actually cares about black people, when the reality is they're simply using her to, of course, foment a political agenda.
Now, is she drawn to Trump because of her economic standing?
You know
Like,
that I do not know. But let me do a search real quick and see what.
because the reason I say that is because even like 50 Cent was like, I'm voting for Trump because of the stuff he's doing for wealthy people or rich people, or like, I don't
Right.
want more taxes and stuff. And I'm just thinking, is she on that bandwagon with him, or is he pardoning someone that she's, because I think her husband or someone like that, or someone close to her went, or her brother or something went to prison recently for some madness. Is she doing it in exchange for a pardon? Like, I just don't know what the motive is for her, like, to do this and just get up there and not even know what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty standard.
But
Forward.
Malcolm did say, like, you got to watch out for these celebrities. Like, which other community? Tell me something. Which other community do you know holds up entertainers as like thought leaders or things like that? Like, it just doesn't happen.
Right.
Like, why does a king?
That doesn't happen.
Oh, why does a king consult a court jester on matters of state? It don't happen.
I was gonna say the same thing. Yeah,
Like, it's
makes no sense whatsoever.
it's a weird one.
Yeah, absolutely. But this also speaks to what, of course, the Trump administration, and I'll argue every presidential administration, thinks of black people. We saw this with Biden, where he was doing a sit down talk with Cardi B. Who the French soldiers Cardi B to be having conversations with the president?
Yeah. Yes, yeah, I remember
So
that.
it shows you what they think of us.
Oh man, it's
And
like,
there are a number of black political leaders. You could talk to professors. Matter of fact, I think there's a brother who's at Duke University, brilliant, right, on global black politics. No, they choose not to do that because they're going to give you. They're not going. It's not someone that you would be able to manipulate or get to, of course, parrot your talking points, right? So that is a reality, and from a political standpoint, it would make sense as a politician. But from a community standpoint, this is something that we should take extreme issue and umbrage with. I would even argue Kamala Harris when they had what's the singer? She's in a relationship with Clay Thompson now, and she had her coming out there doing like I don't want to see um, a rapper of any ilk, right, coming
mm,
out and performing, right. I want to
yeah.
hear you know
You want to hear what the you want to hear what the political message is.
Absolutely. What is it? What are you going to do? Right. So we find that this. I think this is the norm now. This is in vogue politically to leverage the power of celebrities to promote one's agenda. I mean, and I would even go back. I would call when the Iraq War took place, and of course, the UK that was complicit in the invasion and dehumanization, and of course, I would argue illegal occupation of Iraq, invasion and occupation of Iraq, a settler, it really was, nothing more than settler colonialism all over again. But I remember they interviewed Britney Spears. Well, what do you think about the president and what he's doing? And her dumb ass. Well, I just feel like we should support the president because this woman does not have a political mind whatsoever. But they know most people are beholden to the power of celebrity and pop culture.
Yeah, it's it doesn't happen as much over here as I've seen it happen in America, where they do
Okay.
celebrities to really sell a political agenda like that. But even if you, I mean, they can have an opinion if they're informed to, like, talk on the subject and stuff. But even in having an opinion, whenever you're in front of a politician, I don't want to see you acting like they're your best friend. They're not supposed to be your friend.
Right.
They're supposed to be a public servant who's supposed
Right.
to listen to your concerns and act on your behalf. I don't want to see. Well, I know she's not a politician, but I don't want to see Michelle Obama palling around with Tracy Ellis Ross or whatever it was they did recently. Like, you know what I mean? They're supposed. Well, I can't say Michelle; she's not a politician, but like, say Barack Obama. I don't
Well,
want
I
to
mean,
see.
but she's a public figure who, in a political apparatus. So, I mean, and I that's a great point because there was a time where you had individuals circulating on social media that Michelle Obama and Oprah Winfrey should run for president and vice president. And people asked me, would you support that ticket? I said, no, neither one of them have any experience in politics.
Of course not. Yeah.
But simply because they were what? Famous.
Yeah, nah, that's
And so that is one of the weaknesses, of course, of black politics, particularly here in the U.S., where symbolism over substance. We also know, and I would presume, brother, that you're from the continent or the Caribbean, your family.
Families from the Caribbean.
Right. And so on the continent of the Caribbean, we're accustomed to having what? Black politicians that look like us. Doesn't mean anything. What are you doing?
Yeah, doesn't mean a damn thing.
Right. Doesn't mean a damn thing.
The president of is it president or prime minister of Jamaica was all rubbing shoulders with Benjamin Netanyahu the other day and stuff like that, and I'm just like, yeah, nah, man. Like, they'll put these black faces in high places, but they don't really do stuff for the people. And I guess that's part of how you get to the level that you get to. Like,
absolutely. And I would give you an example. A brother, he was the former district attorney of Kentucky. And let me pull this up. Former district attorney of Kentucky, Daniel Cameron, right? Black man. When the situation came to his desk to indict those officers for killing that sister in her apartment, right? They had a no-knock warrant. On the front page of the New York Times, as you all know, I subscribe to the Times. It stated Daniel Cameron, and he chose not to indict. It stated Daniel Cameron passed his first political test, and that test was what? This isn't what the Times said, but I'm going to say this. Or was he going to be loyal to his party, which was Republican, or was he going to be loyal to his community and his race? Right?
Yeah.
That's the reality. So you don't make it that far if you are actually engaging in actions, creating initiatives that will actually benefit the people. If not, they're going to try to find a way to undermine you. And oftentimes, even, we know them folks, they would actually organize their community to vote against you, even if they're not even in that community.
Yeah, it's sad. But, like, on the other side of it, though, if we're going to look at this thing objectively, how much can we expect from these political leaders if we're not supporting them, if we're not funding their campaigns, if we're not providing a platform for them to be able to speak freely and not face any of these other political ramifications for standing up for the community? We have to take some of the blame as well. Do you know what I mean? Because we're just not organized like that, and that's all over. Like, even like here in the UK, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day and stuff, and we were just having a chat because there's other groups that have come into the UK that have surpassed the Caribbean community by what seems like light years, and I'm just like, is it their fault or is it the fault that we're just not organized?
Right. Well, Garvey Stokely Carmichael said, "We're not outnumbered; we're simply outorganized."
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Townsend, you said you love Malcolm X. Martin Luther King was a pig. What would make you make the claim that Dr. King was a pig? Right. I'm taking issue with that.
That's
But
something that I'm seeing quite a lot. Like a lot of people really going in on
right,
MLK recently. I don't fully understand that, but
yeah, right. Neither do I. Probably just someone talking in the chat. But Mr. Sandman, I see you tapping in, brother. But yeah, so these are some issues. Unfortunately, most politicians, and this is really how it goes in the black community. If a black person engages in politics, if they're not coming in from a grassroots frame of reference, what typically takes place is they are identified early by the power elite and then cultivated into leadership, right? This is typically what happens, right? And I've seen this before, right? Oftentimes, particularly even on the right and the left, right? They kind of scour campuses, collegiate campuses, and they're looking for individuals who are malleable, right? Easy to mold, ideologically nebulous, maybe do not have a good sense of understanding of history. They snatch them up before you know it, they have a platform, before you know it, they're running for office. And they're promoting an agenda that oftentimes is antithetical to their own existence, let alone their community thriving.
but they themselves must know that.
No, I would argue most individuals, brother, are miseducated, and they don't know that. For example, and there was a situation I was working with a brother who was a Christian, and he was articulating that he was thinking about voting, going red, right, becoming a Republican because the Republican Party supports traditional marriage, etc. I even had this conversation with my parents. And I said, well, mom and dad, and they support marriage. And I said, well, mom and dad, did you know that the Republican Party was the one that created the concept and idea of no fault divorce? 1967, Ronald Wilson Reagan, when he was the governor of California. I said, did you know that all of these individuals who are promoting this party line of we support traditional marriage and we're not in support of LGBTQ rights have had numerous scandals come out in the public where they actually are on the down low?
Yeah.
Right. So, but like I said, but if you don't have an understanding that both political parties are white supremacist organizations, you will fall for the okie doke.
But there's no off ramp for Americans because it's either vote for one team or the other. I mean, there are
I
third
would disagree.
parties.
I would disagree. I think locally, like for example, in my hometown, the city of Dayton, we just elected a nonpartisan mayor. Right. This is the first mayor in probably over a century to win an election. And this mayor, she's a black woman, was not a Republican or Democrat. She ran independent. Right. But it was because of the grassroots work she had been doing for the past 12 to 15 years.
Right.
Right. So there is an off ramp, but it has to be, of course, independent grassroots politics.
And how does that work out in terms of like when they need to get like funding from the state or funding from the federal government and stuff? Do they look at them as like, well, you're not from our party, so you won't get as much support or you won't get
right now that's
how it works?
That's a bit deep into the weeds. I'm not aware, but I do know that most states or municipalities are legally able to access certain national and state resources.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Well, it'll be interesting to see how it works out for that person.
Right.
And see, and maybe that's the key. Maybe it is about focusing locally rather than
absolutely
nationally.
Right. Yeah. Matter of fact, I'm gonna bring this up. I'm gonna show you all what I'm talking about here. So you all don't think I'm simply bloviating, right? Give me 1 second. Yeah, so as you can see, Stanislaus elected Dayton mayor, defeating Mims Fairchild. Yeah, so the sister here, she ran independent, right? Closest mayoral race in more than a decade and a half. Incumbent, right? Let's see here. The statement, Mayor Mims on Tuesday acknowledged that he lost, of course. Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. So, as a university professor, is that what you are?
No,
Well,
director.
director. Is it easy for you to get in front of politicians to talk to and?
No, because it would depend on, well, typically that'll be a job for a university president. It's the university's president's job to promote the brand of the institution and to bring in funding.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And if say for example there were some politicians that wanted to talk about social issues in the community, for example, is that a forum that you get access to, or?
That's something I would have to discuss with my superiors.
Oh, okay, all right,
Yeah.
okay. Hmm.
Yeah, because and here's the reason why. Because let's say you bring in a politician that has a particular um, partisan view of an issue. Well, there may be students who don't align themselves with that politician's view. They may now be uncomfortable coming to you and speaking about situations in their personal or academic life.
Hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So that's something I would talk to my superior about.
yeah. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. So this Nicki Minaj thing, it just came out of the blue. I didn't even know that
Absolutely.
it was happening today. Like,
Hmm.
I saw it and I was just like, wow. But yeah,
Absolutely.
it's just like, yeah. I just the first thing of my head into my head was like, why her? Like, why is that's not even her real name as well? But you know what I mean? Like, she's all over the news, as, and I just hope that it just doesn't get out there like this is what black people want, what she said, just because she's black. But you know what
Right.
the undertones are gonna. That's what the undertones are gonna promote, right?
Right. Absolutely. So something to address. We hope that is not the case.
Mm.
But as you know, we have to go to one sister. She says you're not out organized, you're out funded. That may be true, but I think there are ways to come up with to work around that. A great example would be, of course, what took place in the city, in my hometown, the city of Dayton, regarding the mayor. Of course, she was outfunded, but she was able to defeat the incumbent Democratic supported mayor because, of course, she was able to out organize him. She had been doing grassroots work in the community for over a decade before she even ran for political office when she created an organization, Neighbors Over Politics. She ran independently as for city commission on 2 occasions and lost. Right. The third time she ran, she actually was successful, beat two Democratic nominated candidates, and then, of course, made an audacious attempt to become mayor, and she was successful. And this was one of the first times in over, if I remember, 30 years, 20 years, in which an incumbent mayor lost re-election. Right. So something to consider. Something to consider. So it can happen, but once again, we have to organize, organize, organize. Once again, family, you're watching themovementspeaks.com, a Black Empowerment Initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. In conjunction with Bequaline Network, we're discussing Nicki Minaj speaking at the United Nations proves Malcolm X is right. Celebrities are puppets. Tap in, be part of the conversation. The link's in the description. The link is in the chat. You do not have to come up to be part of the conversation, and you can use a pseudonym to be part of the convo as well. Tap in, want to hear what you have to say. Put a 1 in the chat if you agree that Malcolm X was right. Celebrities are puppets. Put a 2 in the chat if you disagree. If you have a dissenting opinion, put a 2 in the chat. We would love to hear from you regarding Nicki Minaj speaking at the United Nations regarding the crisis in Nigeria. As we know, unfortunately, 15 of our young sisters were kidnapped by a Islamic jihadist organization. However, the Trump administration is spending this, as well as many others, that this is an attack on Christians. However, what we know is that these jihadists are attacking anyone who do not align with their narrow view of the Islamic faith. So if you are a moderate, you can even be Muslim, but if you're moderate, right? If you're a Christian, if you are practicing the traditional African faith, if you are an atheist, right? If you do not align with their views, right? Mr. K, how you doing, brother? If you do not align with their views, right, then of course you may be, if you come into their orbit, you may be SOL, as many like to say. So something to consider here.
Has Nigeria responded since she's made her speech or said anything?
Well,
Commented?
yes, of course they've stated that, of course, their intel, the White House intel is incorrect, but they also stated that they've taken steps to try to, of course, strengthen their security forces to, of course, address the issue that's taking place in northern Nigeria. But I think it's also important to know that this is something that's been going on for quite some time in the Sahel, and part of this is due to, of course, the blowback that came from, of course, the dismantling of Liberia's infrastructure of their actual government, right? So as this is part of course, as you mentioned, of course, Ukraine is an issue, but this is an issue as well, right? As a result of the destabilization of Libya, that we found that Libya became a safe haven for jihadist groups.
And Nigeria borders the Sahel states as well.
That is correct.
Don't forget that they're in a bit of a conflict with France and all these kind of places that are trying to like regain influence in that area. So I've
Right.
heard some of those French army guys do mercenary work as well. So, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if this Boko Haram or whoever it is aren't even a real organization. It's just some of these guys going around doing it, but you just don't know, man.
Right. And
What
let
do
me
you think?
we see Malcolm X also once said, if you don't stand for something, then you'll fall for anything. Paul Robeson stood for something, and that's why he wasn't a puppet. Facts, and in fact, the fact that Paul Robeson stood for something is why he was blacklisted, particularly during the McCarthy era, right? Because he stood for something, because he was politically mature, because he was intellectually curious and incisive, he did not fall for propaganda machine, which is, of course, the American media, and the prevaricating lies of U.S. National intelligence and U.S. Politics. So as a result, he was blacklisted. So what we tend to find, and this is a reality, family, if you unfortunately are promoting a perspective that is in the best interest of African people, you typically will face some type of social, political, economic retrenchment or redress. So something to consider.
What do you think the worst case scenario might be as a result of her speech?
Well, I just think it's just propaganda. It's just a propaganda machine. And I mean that's the reality. It's just to promote propaganda. Most people are already deaf, dumb, and blind to what's really taking place, right? And I think this will simply further keep people, in a space to where they're falling for, of course, the machinations of Western and American empire.
All right then. Okay, well, I've got to go to bed because it's 1:45. But
No doubt, no doubt. I appreciate you, brother.
it was good to catch up, man.
Yes, sir.
All right, speak to you soon. Bye. Have a good show.
All right, family. So, Snapshot Reviews, he's tapping out. He's in the UK. So, tap in, family. Link is in the description. Link is in the chat. I'll put another link in the chat. Tap in, be part of the convo. We'd love to hear from you all regarding this issue. How do you feel about the followers of Christianity in Nigeria being so-called attacked by Islamic extremists? Well, we know that in part is part of the narrative that the West wants to promote, right? Right. The argument that they're making is that Christians are being attacked, so they can promote this concept and idea of Christian nationalism, right? And so that's really what that's coming from. But also, we know it's being used as an excuse for U.S. incursion. I would argue military action or incursion in Nigeria. And we know that when the U.S. military shows up, they're not there to be ambassadors of goodwill. They're there to make sure they're securing natural resources. So something to consider as well there. Right, you said, who takes Nicki seriously as a political spokesman? Absolutely. I mean, I know I don't, but something to once again consider. Link is in the description, links in the chat. Mr. K, I appreciate you, brother. I appreciate your emails, but I need you to tap in for this one. right? Tap in. You don't have to cam up, and as you know, you can use a pseudonym. But definitely want to hear from you regarding this issue. Sister Shy as well. We know that a number of young ladies, over 2 dozen young ladies, were kidnapped, and so definitely want to hear from you as well. As a sister on the panel, this is an issue. I would, of course, want to know why is it that they're looking to kidnap young girls. We know when Boko Haram was engaging in this behavior back in 2014, some of them stated that we were going to sell them into slavery, right? Extremely unfortunate. But I definitely would love to hear from some sisters this afternoon, evening, regarding this issue on what's taking place in Nigeria. It's something to consider that the young ladies that were kidnapped were, of course, Muslim. So that, of course, is an intrepid contravention of course, what's being promoted by the White House, that there's Christians being attacked. But what we find is that there's actually Muslim young ladies, over 2 dozen Muslim young ladies who were kidnapped by this jihadist organization, right? And so the power vacuum that was created by the destabilization of Libya has led to an influx of jihadist groups in the Sahel, right? Attacking, of course, civilians, to be quite honest with you, who, and if you do not ascribe to their very narrow view of the Islamic faith, you are unfortunately in a position to be victimized. And so we know it is a responsibility of the state to protect the citizens. That's one of the responsibilities of the state. And we know that. Oh yes, I did review the interview, but I haven't reached out to him yet. I have not reached out to him yet. Why isn't Trump threatening Israel to stop killing Muslims in Gaza? It is supposed to be a separation between religion and state. Well, I mean, we know, once again, this is just about the Western Empire, right? So they're going to turn a blind eye to issues. And we know that, unfortunately, part of Western Empire is this concept and idea of Christian nationalism. So if you are not a member of the Christian faith, then you have a little to no value to, of course, their goals and aspirations. So I think that's something to consider as well. But unfortunate, yes. Problematic, absolutely. But this is the reality, right? And for another aspect of it is for many Christians support the nation state of Israel, or as our brother from the VA calls it, is it real? Due to their Christian faith, right? That many are unaware of concepts such as settler colonialism, etc. But the other issue is that for the Western world, particularly the United States, maybe even the UK, you could put them in there. Israel was considered a strategic regional partner in the Middle East. So that's an issue as well. So something to consider. Once again, family, link is in the description. Link is in the chat. We'd love to hear from you all regarding Nicki Minaj, the Pink Friday rapper, speaking at the United Nations regarding the alleged targeting and genocide of Christians in Nigeria. Was Malcolm X right when he stated that celebrities are puppets? Tap in, family, be part of the conversation. We'd love to hear from you all on this matter. Link is in the description. The link is in the chat. Come be part of the convo. So I was able to look up a position paper that was written back in October 2018 that really talked about the role that Libya being destabilized, Libya becoming a failed state, right? I'm reading now, Libya as a failed state has destabilized the whole region with weapons trafficking, which developed there, as well as the fact that this country has become a safe haven for jihadi groups, right? Another Algerian official considered that in Libya, anyone can acquire any kind of weapon he wants, provided he can pay for it, right? Tunisia senior analyst for the International Crisis Group considers, for his part, that while Tunisia was able to contain jihadi organizations, the real problem was Libyan in the mess there. The issue of the jihadi returnees from the Middle East who might decide to go to Libya, all of the trafficking and networks there were connected to Tunisia. So once again, we see that this vacuum as a result of Libya, of course, being destabilized, has led to, of course, this trickle down, you can argue, adversely affecting African people, particularly in the Sahel, or what we would call south of the Sahara, right? So something to consider. This is not something that, of course, the White House is going to put out. We know politicians typically are promoting a concept and idea that is beneficial to their person, rather than, of course, making claims that would incriminate them as being responsible for said conflict. And we know that whenever the West typically engages in military intervention, it actually leaves that area, region or nation state worse than it was before. So something to consider there. But Trump's flexing his muscles against Venezuela. He probably thinks Nigeria is an easy country to demonstrate military power against. Absolutely, absolutely, right? We know typically the West, they do not go into they do not engage in conflict, military conflicts with nations who are on equal strength, have the equal military economic power. So I mean, this is why we tend to have proxy wars, right? The last time we saw an actual Western states actually fighting on equal terms and with countries that were on that level would be, of course, World War II, right? But since then, there have been proxy wars, the Cold War, etc. So, are you familiar with the YouTube channel, the Pan Africanist Torian Fellow? No, I am not. I'm not familiar with this channel. So, yeah, so I definitely would, Mr. Saman, I think you're right. I think this will be a situation where they will look to demonstrate military power against Nigeria, against African people. And I think at the end of the day, they will be looking to, of course, engage in resource acquisition. And that, of course, will be the oil in Nigeria. So something to keep your eyes on, family. But I definitely think that is what will be coming down the pipe next. So something to consider. So tap in, family. Link is in the description. Link is in the chat. You're watching LumungaSpeaks.com, a Black Empowerment Initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black in conjunction with the Puerto Rico Line Network, the Pan African social media extraordinaire, in the home of African-centered news and information. If you're watching on X, formerly known as Twitter, you of course can log off of X and come onto YouTube and watch if you want to be part of the conversation. Love to hear from you all. Once again, family, make sure you be a blessing to the show. You can hit the Cash App, you can hit the course Venmo, and of course the Super Chat as well, so we can make sure we can continue to bring you information from an African-centered frame of reference. We know oftentimes, unfortunately, it's very difficult to receive news and information outside of course, Western propaganda. And this is a place that we're striving and we honor to be able to do that for you all. So definitely want to make sure that we are staying tapped in, staying locked in. And that's someone, Mr. K, that's someone I will be reaching out to make sure to see what we can do about collaborating, right, and making sure that we're being consistent in providing, of course, content and information for our brothers and sisters here in these, what they call YouTube streets. So once again, family, link is in the description. The link is in the chat. And I'm going to share this policy paper that I came across. And you all can probably look it up yourself as well. But as you can see here, policy paper, the Liberian Security Continuum, the impact of the Libyan crisis on the North African Sahelian regional system, right? And so we kind of go into the abstract. The paper analyzes the impact of the Libyan crisis on the regional environment of North Africa and the Sahel. More specifically, the paper shows that despite international attempts to resolve the crisis, the situation remains very difficult in Libya, with the persistence of instability and radical militancy and a dramatic increase in illegal trafficking, particularly human trafficking, right? So we do know that after, of course, Libya was destabilized in the fall of Muammar Gaddafi, open air slave markets began to pop up, right? And we know, unfortunately, the individuals who were ensnared the most by those open air slave markets were, of course, Black African people. In turn, this has dramatically affected the regional scene, especially due to the upsurge in jihadi activities as a result of Libya having been a safe haven for jihadists since 2011. Destabilizing Tunisia and the Sahel countries, Algeria, also fearing destabilization from Libya, has been heavily involved in the various initiatives to restore security in the country. However, overall divergent interests in regional competition have so far limited the impact of such initiatives. So this is what we're looking at here, unfortunately, right? So when many people say, oh, see, this is just an example of Black people are unable to govern themselves, what we're looking at is something that's very similar to when we talk about what's going on in Haiti, but something that, of course, we know takes place when you're talking about, of course, imperialism, is fomenting civil unrest. So then one can then say, hey, we have to come in to help these people, right? When the reality is they've caused the problem themselves. something that's also known as disaster capitalism. So that's a term to remember, family. We talk about disaster capitalism. So let's see here. Politics of trafficking. In the absence of any credible scheme to disarm actors in Libya, the country remains awash with weapons, and regional governments continue to fear the impact of this on the availability of weapons to insurgents in their own countries. The conditions that facilitated a major expansion of trafficking activities through southern Libya, particularly marginalization, political isolation, and a breakdown of the local economy, have not changed, and trafficking remains a key source of income for people in the region. However, over the past 3 years, traffickers have changed the way they work, with the smuggling of migrants growing significantly. At the same time, the difficulties of migrating legally into Libya, coupled with the more favorable, though still dire, economic situation in Libya compared with some neighboring countries, have resulted in irregular migration from these countries into Libya's south. The intersection of this, the smuggling of migrants through Libya to Europe, the presence of foreign opposition groups and mercenary fighters, and unresolved political issues linked to southern Libya's non-Arab minority communities has resulted in a cross-border population movement becoming one of the most sensitive current issues in Libya. Although these sensitivities mean that there are no clear statistics regarding the size of this phenomenon, it may well have more significant future effects across the region than the persistence of weapons trafficking, right? So we're looking at the human element here as well. But once again, family, you could go online to find this article, right? Here's the title once again: Libyan Security Continuum, the Impact of the Libyan Crisis or the North African Sahel Regional System. So, Mr. Sandman, appreciate you. Nigeria joined BRICS. This threat forces China in Russia to protect Nigeria. Damn, it's World War III is seriously brewing. Well, I guess the question here is, giving a shout out to Sister Shah, absolutely, will China and Russia come to Nigeria's defense, right? If America seeks military intervention, military action. That is a great issue to the great point there, but I doubt it does, because what typically takes place is what the West, they just engage in proxy wars. They won't actually fight the battle themselves. They just have other individuals on the ground fighting for their ideological and economic interests, right? Great example that would be, of course, the Cold War, right? So America went to war with Vietnam rather than with the Vietnamese, rather than going to war with Russia, which of course was the fountainhead of communism at the time, right? So something to consider. But great point, Mr. Sandman, and we definitely appreciate the super chat. Definitely appreciate the super chat. Tap in, family. Link is in the description. Link is in the chat. You're watching LaMoonSpeaks.com and Black Empowerment Initiative, where we believe we can gain competitive advantage by always betting on Black, in conjunction with, of course, Beacon Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, and the home of African-centered news and information. If you are familiar, of course, with what took place in Libya back in 2011, put a 1 in the chat if you're familiar. Put a 2 in the chat if you're unfamiliar. We're going to test your political knowledge today, family. And as you all know, today is the 234th anniversary of the Battle of Vertiers, right? This battle, of course, was the last battle of the Haitian Revolution, and of course, then Emperor Jean-Jacques Dessalines subsequently declared 6 weeks later Haiti's independence from France. So we definitely want to give a shout out to our brothers and sisters in the struggle in Haiti, right? Sans passe. We know Zopound brothers and sisters don't play. Definitely want to give them a shout out, show them love, and family. Make sure you tap in, be part of the conversation. Want to hear from you all regarding this issue, particularly the young women, unfortunately being kidnapped. Do we believe that they're going to be trafficked? Do we know Boko Haram back in 2014 stated that they would traffic the young ladies and sell them into slavery? We know this is a particular issue, unfortunately, in that area of the world, particularly when you're dealing with jihadists. But we want to make sure that we're also strategizing of how can we provide assistance and support for our brothers and sisters. Would that be us leaning and pressuring, of course, our own public officials to provide support to brothers and sisters in Nigeria, providing them the ability to immigrate to the United States, right? So something to consider there as well. I do know that there was brothers and sisters from Sudan, what's now known as South Sudan, that were able to flee and gain immigration to the United States based on the fact that they were being persecuted based on not only race and ethnicity, but also religion. A rapper who distributes vulgar lyrics giving a speech on critical geopolitical issues is disrespectful. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said before, it shows what American government, even at the highest level, thinks of black people, right? Same as when Biden, of course, was having that sit down with Cardi B, right? But once again, it shows what they think of us, but also it shows what they think of celebrities having, of course, significant influence, right? So they have to impair a narrative that, of course, is adverse to facts. They typically aren't aware of that. We know, as Malcolm X said, celebrities are puppets, they're clowns. In fact, we even call them clowns. And as a result, unfortunately, we tend to suffer as a result, right? And it promotes, of course, political miseducation, misinformation, and oftentimes disinformation, right? We know this is even the case with one Stephen A. Smith. So, but tap in, family. Defender of Logic, appreciate you, DOL, for tapping in. Be part of the conversation. The link is in the description. The link is in the chat. Definitely would love to hear from you all regarding the issue of Nicki Minaj speaking at the United Nations. Does this prove that Malcolm X was right? Celebrities are puppets. You know, Malcolm even went a bit harder in the paint, right? He was a bit more strident. And he said that this proves that they are clowns. How do you think this speech will land on the hearts of Nigerians? Will it soften them up for Western intervention? Yeah, I think that's a great point. I don't know so much if the speech will soften them up as to the dire straits that many want to be living under, right? If you are, unfortunately, in a space to where you are a victim, you are a potential victim to be trafficked and kidnapped, I think a reasonable person wouldn't care who is coming in, right? They simply want, to be able to have, save their life. And so I know, just to be quite honest, if I was in a similar situation, I wouldn't care who the person was. If they were coming to rescue me, right? There may be some long-term political and economic ramifications, but I think, the reality of the situation is, unfortunately, I don't think the speech would do much other than promote the concept and idea for the West, for Americans, that we need to take action. But for the individuals who are living in this type of predicament, hey, listen, that's my condition. Get me out of here, right? For example, we know, unfortunately, here in the West, particularly here in the United States, the police tend to be tyrannical, right? They have an agenda, particularly racially. They tend to be unnecessarily aggressive with us when we get pulled over and we suffer from driving while black, DWB, etc. But at the same time, if you're in a home or you're in a car accident and hey, your car's about to blow up, you irrespective of who the individual is, you just want to get drug out the car. You want to have your life preserved and then be able to address whatever issues need to be addressed. So I think something to consider there. I would argue the speech will be nothing more than political grandstanding. That is my position. The speech will be political for grandstanding to, of course, promote a historical speech that's devoid of facts to the American people to justify, of course, Western or American intervention, military intervention. For example, we saw this before with the concept and idea of Iraq having weapons of mass destruction. To this day, I still don't know what a weapon of mass destruction is. However, we know that they were going to do what they wanted to do, irrespective of what the intelligence showed. But they were promoting that because they were trying to galvanize support from the American public to engage in a war, a preemptive strike against the sovereign nation of Iraq. So something to consider there. So tap in, family. The link is in the description. The link is in the chat. We'd love to hear from you all. You're watching, of course, LumumaSpeaks.com, a Black Empowerment Initiative where we believe we can gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black in conjunction with People Line Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire in the home of African-centered news and information. If you're watching, like, subscribe, and share. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Hit that notification bell. We definitely need to get our subscriber game up. We need to get a subscriber game up. We need to get our subscriber game up. It needs to be 10 Team Pan-African and family. We're looking for 10,000, keyword 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. This is our goal. and we believe that we can make it happen. So make sure you're liking, you're subscribing, and you're sharing. Right, this is one of the few spaces, family, amongst the, of course, plethora of platforms that are on YouTube that is going to provide you factual information from an African-centered frame of reference. There are some other brothers out there and sisters out there who have Pan-African channels, but we definitely want to make sure we're supporting our RBG brothers and sisters, and we can't do this without your support. Then that way we're able to consistently bring our daily Black History facts. I remember there was a sister who said, I love the fact that your channel provides daily Black History facts. And we want to make sure that we're consistently providing information to you all to counter, of course, the debilitating effects of course, Western, we would argue neo-colonial miseducation, right? We understand that at one point we were suffering from colonial education, and then it was post-colonial, but now we're suffering from what we call Sister Farida, who we're going to look to get on the show, neo-colonial education, right? And so we want to make sure we're pushing back against that. So make sure you support the show in the channel any way you can. But tap in, family. If not, we're going to close out. But definitely want to hear from you all. Defender of Logic, hope you can tap in. Sister Shy, hope you can tap in. Mr. K, listen, I'm gonna keep using my bully pulpit, man. We need to hear from you. You have a lot of information, a lot of knowledge. You've educated me. I always argue that you are our second resident historian here at Lumumba Speaks to People on our network, along with Brother Dwayne Omawale, Esquire. But make sure you tap in and be part of the convo. If not, we're going to close out. So, final thoughts, family, before we call it a evening. Final thoughts before we call it an evening. Final thoughts, final thoughts. Until next time, family, y'all know what to do. Always, always bet on Black. Peace. Before you go, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you for supporting the channel. And remember, here at Lumumba Speaks, we always bet on Black. Peace.